that enables us all to continue each in their own way, because we are all different, even according to each individual's work. But what joins us to become one person is the sweetness from the flavored drink Hallelujah Ginger Tea drink and Hallelujah Tamarind drink. The flavor that quenches your thirst while at the same time treating and healing your body, because it is 100% natural. Enjoy the drink that has got the tamarind juice in it. Made by Hallelujah Reflexology, Healthy Solutions and Nutritional Research Center Limited. Get yourself a bottle of Hallelujah from all shops around.
Live from UBC Studios in Kampala. This is Good Morning Uganda.
Good morning to Uganda. A brand new week is here and it's opening its arms unto you, saying welcome to a new week. My name is Priscilla Nalwoga and this is Good Morning Uganda on your preferred network UBC, and our mandate is to inspire Uganda. So for every part of Uganda you are waking up to this morning, good morning to you and thank you so much for joining us for yet a brand new week and a brand new day. Now, speaking of the middle of the month, 15th November 2021 is where we are, which leaves us with approximately 15 more days to end the month, but then again 15 more days to Christmas mode, Christmas buzz. Personally, I've already started wishing some people Merry Christmas because it is the season of festivities. But speaking of the middle of the week, the month, we get to actually have interesting stories that are waking up with us this morning. In the wake of this morning, government is set to issue new logbooks to every single vehicle in this country. Now imagine what that is going to come to in terms of cost, time and your vehicle at that. Then you also get to look at within the African continent, where you do have the son of slain leader Muammar Gaddafi of Libya now setting himself up for presidential elections that are upcoming in the country of Libya. Of course, internationally we do have a country, Austria, that has approved a total lockdown for the unvaccinated people in their country effective midnight. So in the wake of this morning, if you're not vaccinated and you stay in Austria, trust you me, it is not optional for you to get out or to get into the heart of the city. You have to stay in the house until you get your vaccine. Speaking of vaccines, our target is really 5 million people to be fully vaccinated by the end of 2021. Are you among that 5 million yet? If you're not, then you do know what to do. And I am joined by the gentleman this morning. Good morning to you, Robert Kirabo.
A lovely morning to you, Priscilla Nalwoga, and of course our darling viewers. We treasure you, don't take you for granted, and we're excited another 7 days because the week gives you 7 days to reshape, to do things that maybe you could have failed the previous week. Here we are, but I'm so much interested in what is happening. That is for people who are not vaccinated. And I think time is coming when Uganda we should get to this, because really we have more vaccines in this country. Recently we got 9 million doses of Johnson & Johnson. So there is so much vaccines than the targeted number that you want to vaccinate. Why are we not absorbing these vaccines? Maybe somewhere, somehow, the law should come in and a bit of pushing here and there. After all, it saves the country the huge monies they would spend in treatment, buying ventilators, ambulances, constructing temporary structures. Why not go that route?
Okay, all right. Felix Nkunda is also joining us for yet a brand new week. Good morning to you, Felix.
Good morning, Priscilla. How are you?
I'm very fantastic. Welcome to a new week.
Well, voila.
How was your weekend?
Well, my weekend was filled with lots of activities and, of course, lots of work. Again, now that universities are back and up and running, we're trying to catch up with the lost time. But, of course, I had an experience on Sunday. I had Thanksgiving service for particular students who are finishing school somewhere, and it was a very nice experience, looking at kids who know how to give thanks to God for whatever they've been through. So everyone who came up kept on thanking God for the time of COVID, and that's when you realize that it means much sense to be alive.
Oh yes, it definitely does. And Robert, you were sharing with me a story earlier on of a student who is, okay, before COVID they were in senior 2. Today they would have been in senior 4, but because of the pandemic, they're stuck. And how that has actually changed their life.
Well, it was very touching because I met this young girl at a party. She happens to be my cousin. And you know, usually when you meet, hey, which class are you? Talk, and she looked at me with a sad face and said, I'm in senior 2, but I was supposed to be in senior 4 if it wasn't because of COVID. As I was moving around, I met another one, and she told me, you know, for me now, during this time, I've learned hairdressing, I've learned a few things, and I think even we started to make money. And she's making real good money because I think she happens to, you know, young kids grasp very fast.
That's true.
And she's perfected the art. And she told me on a day she can make a 50 or 60,000. And that means even much to her family because she may be even earning more now than one of the people in the family. Then also, there comes a story of one who went into bricklaying. This one says, I was contracted for 20,000 bricks. I still have to finish. So some have gotten hold of money and they think what they are doing now can sustain them in life after. After all, they are seeing even parents who are doing the same work. Then this one speaks with a lot of pain. That can you imagine, instead of being in senior 4, uncle, I'm in senior 2 because of COVID. But I'm in senior 4. No, you're in senior 2, you're going to go back and study, and then you'll be in senior 4.
Well, the plight of students that haven't been to the classroom since March 2020 is a sad one, but hopefully as committed by the Ministry of Health and also the Ministry of Education and Sports that come January 2022, perhaps the doors to schools and education fully will be opened for everyone that is affected. But of course, you do have the same happening for teachers. You do have the same happening for private institutions, and not some teachers who have gotten into animal rearing. There's a teacher called James Morondo who has gotten into chicken rearing, and as we speak today, he's earning big thanks to COVID, him being out of a job and getting something else to do. I don't know if he will be willing to go back to the blackboard, get a chalk and actually teach students again, meaning that we're going to be having a gap somewhere, somehow. Felix Nkunda, you are in this part of you know, the whole picture as an educationist. How do you actually encourage fellow teachers and lecturers to be able to come back and continue with the tools of trade?
Well, I think the first important thing, Priscilla, is to appreciate that there is much change in life. And this cuts across in terms of what you can do and what you'll be able to do. Of course, even when you come back, you must be able to accept that there's a new way of life. For example, there is more electronic appreciation than it was before. You must be digital, even if you didn't want to. I'm assuming a teacher who can't even use a smartphone in this day and era. So I think as they gear up to come back and try to be of sense or make effect to the whole fraternity, you must gear up for the new challenges that come with it. For those who are still willing to pick on with the job, I know for a fact that the education sector will never go down entirely. So we will be back at it again, and let's take it step by step. Let's see.
The Ministry of Education is taking it step by step by mandating those that have diploma holdings to actually upgrade and get degrees to be teachers in this country. Anyway, all those encompass what we're going to be discussing this morning. But before we get into the deep of Good Morning Uganda this morning, we definitely want to give you a recap of the stories that have been catchy, trending, and you might have missed out on, both locally and internationally. But starting off with the local scene,
where the First Lady and of course the Minister for Education and Sports, Jane Kataha Museveni, met bankers, urging them to ensure that they soften the terms for private institutions in this country. The First Lady and Minister for Education and Sports, Jane Museveni, appealed to bankers to consider halting the repayment of loans by schools for the time being. She said the preparators of private schools are crying out to bankers to consider their predicament in settling the outstanding loans because of the continued closure of their institutions. The First Lady was meeting with representatives of the Uganda Bankers Association, the State Minister for Finance, Planning and Economic Development, Henry Ariganyira Musasizi, the Permanent Secretary, Minister of Finance, Planning and Economic Development, and Secretary to the Treasury, Ramadhan Ngobi, and a representative of the Deputy Governor of Bank of Uganda. The meeting, hosted by the First Lady at State House, Nakasero, ensured that she brings out the plight of private schools. She decried the bad culture of failing to save for a bad day that Uganda and Africa region has had over the years, not only as a people but also as institutions. Henry Ariganyira Musasizi, the State Minister for Finance, said government wants to work with the financial institutions to find the best practical solution to recover the economy. He requested the banks to consider halting accruing loans on interest for both the principal and the interest until the schools have resumed. The chairman, Uganda Bank Association, Matthias Katumba, the CEO of DFCU Bank, said they acknowledge that the education sector has a huge value chain behind it, including service providers for food, scholastic materials, transporters, utilities, maintenance works, real estate, and many others, which by extension have all been impacted.
Premier Robin Anabanja has told security officials attending a 2-month specialized joint security training at the National Leadership Institute, Chankwanzi, to carry out their duties with commitment and integrity. The trainees undertaking the Senior Advanced Training course at Nali are from Uganda People's Defense Forces, Uganda Prisons Service, and Uganda Police Force. Premier Nabanja advised security organs, especially police, to be cautious, especially while executing court orders, as some of them are suspicious and require further analysis. The director, Nali Brigadier Charles Chisembo, explained that the course is meant to equip the senior security officials with managerial skills. This was on the sidelines of the training of officials from the Office of the Prime Minister who have been undergoing a 6-day strategic management training at Nali. The NRM Secretary General Richard Twadong disclosed to the staff of the Office of the Premier Minister that they are partially to blame for the slow implementation of the NRM manifesto. And the Premier urged the trainees to ensure quality service delivery to the public as per the knowledge and experiences gained from the training.
Away from that, we now look at road construction in Kamuli, where the First Deputy Prime Minister, Rebecca Alitwala Kadaga, launched the construction of works of a 2 billion shilling community access road network in Kamuli. The roads are meant to improve connectivity with Kamuli district with the neighboring district. First Deputy Premier warned constructors against shoddy work and corruption. A road network of about 30 kilometers, including Kayunga Mbulamuti Road, Kige Landing Site, and Buta Balamnamisindwa Road, is to be constructed. The road connects Kamuli district to Isimba Bridge in Kayunga district. During the launch, the First Deputy Premier warned the contractors against shoddy work and corruption, saying they will not go unpunished should they risk. The roads have not been undergoing maintenance for over 8 years and will now be upgraded to a first-class maram at a cost of about 2 billion shillings. The leaders commended government for the project, saying once the road is completed, it will boost the economic activities of the people.
Finally, on the local scene, a section of members of parliament from rice-growing areas are calling upon government to slow down on evicting rice farmers from wetlands. The reasoning is that transition from rice growing to another alternative source of livelihood should be gradual. State Minister for Environment Beatrice Atim Anwar says government is considering fish farming as one alternative to prevent further encroachment and degradation of wetlands. Some have done it on small scale, call it subsistence rice growing. Others are doing it on large scale commercial basis for both consumption and for sale. Quite a good source of livelihood according to beneficiaries. But this has unfortunately been at the expense of ecosystem, with the wetlands suffering extinction. This is what has attracted government attention to embark on a wetland restoration drive. This point of view is shared by quite a number of other members of parliament. Wetland restoration in Uganda is not just a dream of yesterday, and some members of parliament attest that the head of state has been one of the advocates.
Now also international stories. Our first story will be looking at Australia comes out to introduce lockdown for unvaccinated persons. About 2 million people have not been fully vaccinated against COVID-19 and have been placed in lockdown in Austria as the country faces a surge in the cases. We are not taking this step lightly, but unfortunately it is necessary now. Chancellor Alexander Schellenberg has said unvaccinated people will only be permitted to leave homes for limited reasons like working or buying food. About 65% of Australia's population is fully vaccinated and one of the lowest rates in Western Europe. Meanwhile, the 7-day infection rate is more than 800 cases per 100,000 people, which is one of the highest in Europe lately. Now still in international stories, at Poland-Belarus border, people decry weaponization and depiction. Now, as good as geopolitical conflict continues to simmer, people are dying in the forest of either sides of the borders between Poland and Belarus. And this weekend, the body of a young Syrian man was found in woods near the Polish border village of the Wolka Teskos, where the cause of death was not immediately known. According to Polish officials, now restricted zone near the border is forbidden space for reporters and aid workers, with no one except local residents allowed to enter. Now reports say that some residents have started putting green lights outside their houses to show they are willing to help people in distress facing freezing conditions and a lack of vital supplies, including medical care. Now back to Africa. Saif al-Islam Gaddafi, son of the ex-Libyan ruler, runs for president in Libya. The son of Libya's late Muammar Gaddafi has registered as a candidate in the country's first direct presidential election next month. Saif al-Islam was once the apparent to his father, but his support for the brutal crackdown on protesters 10 years ago tarnished his image. Now, since 2011, uprising Libya was being riven by conflict. Rights groups have raised fears that the vote scheduled for 24th December will not be free and fair. Now, World Powers UN Secretary General have warned that anyone who tries to obstruct it or falsify the outcomes will face sanctions.
And I can't wait to see how that journey pans out for Islam Gaddafi. Very interesting turn of history. Once the father was on the throne, now the son wants to also take on the throne. But this morning we encourage you to actually keep healthy, given the fact that if it's happening in Australia, who knows, it could come to Africa, more or less in Uganda. If you're not vaccinated, you're not permitted to access any public place.
And well, I look forward to that day. But by and large, we still talk about issues of health here in Good Morning Uganda. And every morning we encourage you to ensure you get Hallelujah Jinga Tea, Hallelujah Turmeric drink. Why? Because these drinks first have been certified by the Uganda National Bureau of Standards, but also they greatly boost your immune system. What Hallelujah Reflexology did is they brought together things that you may not have enough time to have them combined and take them at once, and condense them in this bottle. In these bottles, healthy for you to boost your immune system. So why don't you ensure that you boost that to avoid spending much on illnesses and various sicknesses?
Okay, all right. Now, just to give you a heads up of what is yet to be expected on our Good Morning Uganda this morning, Felix Nkunda, what do we have in our newsreel?
Well, of course, we'll be touching base to deal with try and look at the psychosocial effects of COVID-19 education sector, mostly now that both in the schools and the learners as well, as we do prepare to reopen the schools come next year. Of course, many effects have been reported. Parliament has been engaged, and most recently we also saw the First Lady talking to the bankers, all in the bid to prepare for the opening. But for us, we want to focus on the psychosocial effects. How do we deal with them, and how do we avert such threats ahead of the reopening?
Okay, that will be in our 7 o'clock hour, where we're going to be having a conversation with Samuel Senono, who is our aviation correspondent here on UBC, talking to us about the big guns that are being displayed in the Dubai Air Show right now, where our very own Uganda Airlines is also showcasing its Neo plane. Also, later on, we'll be looking at the tabloids this morning. A traffic update will also be expected in the 7 o'clock hour. In our 8 o'clock hour, Robert Kirabo is going to be bringing us.
We are going to discuss issues of migration in this country. Who is a citizen? How do you become human trafficking? All these in the 8 o'clock hour.
And that hour is going to be crowned up by Ruben Pima Chividango, who is going to find a way to justify how Uganda Cranes performed badly over the course of the 2 games that they had on Thursday last week and yesterday evening, a loss to Mali. And of course, how Mercedes has now gained back its status in Formula One, among other sports updates. Our poll question this morning is in the line of,
and that would be, how can government enhance growth and management of Uganda Airlines? Now, of course, ahead of the new appointments there on the board, and of course, coming out, Minister Kasaija came out to also acknowledge that there were a couple of mistakes, but however, they are mending the gaps. So we want to know from you, how can government enhance growth, but also management of Uganda Airlines? Be able to share the same with us through our Twitter handle, that is #UBCGMU, but also on our WhatsApp number 0709602592. And for those of you who are streaming live on YouTube, be able to leave a message, but also use the same number to leave an SMS.
all right, thank you so much. For now, we get to leave you with the song for the day. Take a short commercial break and we will find you in our 7 o'clock hour. Good morning.
from Now Avenue in UBC Studios. This is Good Morning Uganda.
Seven o'clock on the dot. It's a brand new morning and welcome to Good Morning Uganda in case you have just joined us as we stride on to kickstart your day. My name is Priscilla Nalwoga alongside the distinguished gentlemen that are both wearing grey this morning. They forgot to give me a heads up. Yes, so Bambi, next time, just drop it in the WhatsApp group that, guys, tomorrow we are wearing grey so that I am in class. Robert Kirabo and Felix Nkunda joining me for the newsreel this morning. But before we get into our newsreel, we just want to give you a recap into our poll question where we desire that you give us an engagement and your opinion.
And that will be how can government enhance growth and management of Uganda Airlines. That springs from the most recent challenges that have been handling this particular institution, but of course also the need to revive it, and also knowing that it's been exhibiting, it will be exhibiting at the, that is Dubai Expo, if I'm not mistaken. So in a bid for us to go global and international, how do we enhance growth and management of Uganda Airlines? Share your sense on Twitter handle, that is #UBCGMU, and WhatsApp 0709 60 25 92. For those who can access Facebook, voila, you can also share that.
I like that. Which Facebook is rebranding
Meta.
to Meta. Yes. So one.
I don't know if it will be Meta Book or Meta Page.
The issue is
Meta Page.
What are the terms coming with the rebranding? That is also something very interesting.
Okay, well, we'll definitely give people an update as and when it does arise in that capacity. But in our newsreel this morning, we wanted to address the psychosocial impact of COVID-19 on academics and academic institutions. Of course, there's so many people that have been affected by COVID-19, but the education sector also has heavily been hit by COVID-19. Teachers, students, parents, and the entire spectrum or framework that does enable education to thrive in this country has suffered in one way or another because of COVID-19. Now, the president did commit, we also do have the Minister for Education and Sports also committing that January 2022 should be the turning point and doors should be open. Everyone must be in class by then. However, does it negate the fact that there's been impact? Does it negate the fact that there's been some psychosocial challenges that people have had to go through? Robert Kirabo here earlier was telling us about his niece that was supposed to be in senior 4 if things were normal. But today, because of COVID-19, she's still in senior 2, 2 years down the road. A sad story. And it's the story of many other students. As we speak, university and tertiary institutions are reopened as of 1st November, and Felix Nkunda has been giving us an update in that regard and how they've been able to manage getting back on course. Of course, there's so much adherence to COVID-19, SOPs encouraging those above 18, teaching staff and non-teaching staff to go for their vaccinations, as well as adapting to new norms that have come along with COVID-19, such as e-learning. But nevertheless, for the rest of them that are waiting to go back to school, what are they yet to face? Let's start by looking at the psychological impact of COVID-19, starting from your story that you shared. The students, the teachers, the parents in that capacity.
Well, like you rightly said, Priscilla, you know, learning is not only presence in school. There are so many other things that really guarantee reasonable, successful learning. And one of them is how psychologically a person is prepared. I want to begin with the students. Now, COVID-19 has brought in a number of problems that cause psychological problems to the students and also to the teachers. First and foremost, if we are to begin with the parents themselves, many parents have lost jobs due to COVID-19. And you see, when a parent loses a job directly, not only him is he psychologically disturbed, but it goes back to the family. We have, because of COVID-19, the poverty that has come in families that have split. That a time came when the father maybe could no longer fed for the family, and you know, there is a connection between poverty and of course sometimes domestic violence. And now these are parents that maybe once were together discussing issues of education, advising each other how best to make ends meet, and now they're not going to be able to do that. Maybe this was a parent who was able to get money and take a child to a school of their choice, has the standard they want, and now they're not able to do that. But go back to the student who is going to go and sit in front of a teacher who is going to be teaching. These students now are in two categories. We have those that have been working, and they're not going to be the same that are going back to their classrooms, because they have learned how to earn. They have learned how to make money, and this is so tempting. You'll find that many children, when you ask them, why did you drop out of school? It's that time they got of money are not well directed, because the parents are busy making ends meet in a country that is hard because of this pandemic. So such a child going back to class, sitting, maybe he was used to, by the end of the day, I have my 20, I have my 50. How are you going to, psychologically, how are you going to ensure that this child sits in class and concentrates? We have those that are returning as fathers. We have those that are returning as mothers. Those that will be privileged, that even after giving birth, will go back and study. Psychologically, that is enough of disturbance that has accrued from COVID-19. And how do you expect such a student, how do you adjust? Now the dilemma, this is where the confusing element comes. That it's not only the parent who has been psychologically disturbed, or the student, it also goes back to the teacher. Because if there's any other profession that was disorganized by COVID-19, I think the teaching profession tops the list. They have been out for a long time, maybe since March, some schools. So when you look at this teacher, he's supposed to be the pivotal point between the student and the parent, but this is a teacher who is equally coming. He's been out of class for a long time. Maybe he's also had family challenge because he's also a parent. His children, his own children, he may not even be able to pay school fees for them because he may be a primary teacher, but you're having those in A level, O level, and those at campus. So even the teacher is, he or she is psychologically disorganized and not able. So when we just think of, come January, we are opening the education institutions, and we don't factor in this critical aspect of psychological stability, ensuring that the teacher, the student that are going back to the class, we've also had special training, special preparation on the psychological impact of this. We may not have successful learning. We may have presence of teachers and students in class, but learning without the psychological element factored in may not occur.
Okay. Turning to Felix Nkunda, you being directly in this sector, do you have all your students having returned to school as we speak today?
Not really.
And the teachers?
No.
Not really.
Yeah.
Which means that there's a gap that has to be filled.
Big gap. Many guys have already left the teaching profession. Probably have sought life elsewhere. Some of them, not necessarily that, probably some of them have even gone back to their villages, for those who have them. And you do clearly see that the effect of this COVID-19 on the institutions of learning, or the academics, or the entire academia fraternity is a hard one. And it is evident, as Robert tried to put it in terms of psychosocial. You pick it from the point of the society. The first evidence of the same, as you have been talking and saying here since almost 2020, the increase in pregnancies for the teenagers is the most evident of the same. The increase in domestic violence is most evident in the same way. The closure of various schools, continuous closure of various schools, is equally evidence of the latter. However, we will have to get started. Having mentioned all those significant challenges that have happened, how do we get past them? I think how do we assist these institutions? How do we assist the societies? How do we assist the students? How do we also assist the schools, for that matter, to pick up the pieces? You know, is it worthy for us to still talk about this particular sect of our society as something that we are proud of, when we have the would-be beacons of the same becoming beggars? You know, so how do we professionally prepare the minds of the most relevant stakeholders in this field ahead of the reopening? For the universities, one may say it's negligible. Why? It being higher education, the thought is that we have mature people, because I would want to think who's the youngest person at university may be how old?
17, if they're really young.
17?
Yeah, some did not go through nursery school. Yes.
3 years.
Wow. So
Maybe 20.
I think
20.
it is modest to think about
20.
maybe 20.
Yeah.
You know, the youngest, but I'm imagining someone who's 17 years it would be tricky. But if we are to take an average, let's look at the age of about 20. Now, it means the people of about 20 years old can easily adjust, can easily be engaged in various things. They can take care of themselves, let me put it that way. But how about the people in schools where you see primary, secondary? As Robert did say earlier, you have the challenge of the teachers. Teachers don't live, by the way, in different communities than all of us. As we struggle to make ends meet, so do they. As we struggle to pay these other bills, so do they. As we struggle to take back kids to our schools, to them, they're also struggling to take their kids somewhere else to be learning. So the psychosocial challenge is a chain of things that will come far from government policy, society appreciation. You look at professionalism. You know, what have we put in place? These people, 2 years of not doing anything. There are people who last touched a book in 2020 March.
Think about the
but you want them to
nursery
start
teachers.
2022 January. What do we have in place in terms of refresher for them? Have we been able to formulate some sort of assurance in this time we have had to deal with some of the challenges?
Okay.
So, or we are just calling people back to, come, whatever happens, happens.
All
and
right.
you're going to, I can predict a scenario where you're going to have a big deficit of teachers. A big deficit of teachers. In fact, this was not the best time for them even to start advocating for that upgrade in terms of studying.
From diploma
yes,
to
this is
degree.
this is the worst time to start such advocacy, because you're going to see a big fall in number of people who are going to be teaching, and at all levels, by the way.
No, but you see, that one has been given a time frame of 10 years
Again.
from implementation, which permits them
know,
to still continue doing what they're doing as teachers,
for
but
now,
also upgrade within the same time frame.
For
Maybe
now,
where
what you
Felix
need-
looks at it, I think, is that these institutions have been recruiting these teachers. That is, those of senior 4, those of senior 6 are now closed. So those that are opting for teachers, because beginning 2021, this new intake, they've not had those certificate and diploma levels. So yes, those that are in service have 10 years, which is good enough time. But those that would be joining the profession at such a level, say nursery teachers, very few nursery schools have degree holders teaching in nursery. So that will automatically create a gap, because many, if they had a degree, maybe they will not choose to go for nursery teaching. Remember, here you can have a degree and do something else as long as you have a degree. So those that would opt for other courses, I think that is where Felix is looking at, that at such a time when this profession has had these problems, is it wise to come up with such?
Okay, all right. We do know that you know, you're watching us from wherever it is you are, and you are greatly affected in one way or another. You could be a parent, you could be a teacher, you could have owned an institution. In one way or another, you're being affected as far as the education sector is concerned. We want to hear your voice. We want to hear from you what has been your experience through this tough time. And you can send us a WhatsApp on 0709 602592. I will repeat, 0709 602592. We always have Sergeant Bernard, who's always giving us an intake in these conversations. Plus you too, we want to hear from you, because these conversations touch you more than anybody else, especially for social interpretation of education into COVID-19 and the reopening come January 2022. But let's go back and assess the times when we had partial reopening of the education sector, when we had the candidates going back to school. How was COVID-19 managed then in terms of SOPs? How was COVID-19 managed in terms of teacher-student ratio and all the other ways that we could have handled COVID-19? Assessment of that evaluation into a full reopening of the education sector. Felix.
You see, when that was being done, there was a lot of anxiety. You get it? In fact, then there was still a ray of hope for this. Like people kept on thinking, you know, this whole COVID thing there's a way it has taken time that it's almost, it's hard to notice that actually it has eaten up this time. Like at that point, we kept on thinking that no, it will just be 2 months. Don't worry. Now, but as time went by, you know, the effects were a bit not that harsh then. We hadn't had the number of schools sold by then like they are today. Teachers still thought that, no, we are getting there. Then, now not until reality has hit, that in as much as when we are discussing January, not until we actually have people back at school, we may be discussing a fallacy. And that's the kind of dilemma we are in. We only thank God that universities have started. Over how, at least they have started. And we are holding on that faith that since these people have started, we are hoping. So there's a lot of hopelessness, which wasn't then there. There was a bit of hope then. But now, having been 2 years at it, you find that, maybe this is the truth of the matter. Then, the school owners would hold on and be like, okay, they had tried to put a bit of online learning, you remember those things, pay some money to keep the institutions running, but it went deeper. For those who kept on giving some handouts to the teachers, they wouldn't anymore. It was easier in the first year, you remember. Even salaries got. What? So, the difference is that the deeper we have gone into this, the more people who have lost hope. And that directly affects the institutions in terms of how many people can hold on to the properties they own in terms of schools. Some schools were being rented, spaces were being rented. Now, who had the capacity to pay for 2 years? Not earning.
And even those that had the capacity to pay for 2 years, paid the 2 years in advance before COVID-19.
But they did,
stretched 5 years, but now that's money.
But they have not been benefiting. That's the thing. So, as we talk about this reopening, we need, and by the way, as I was happy when I saw the meeting between the Minister of Education and the bank owners and the Association of Bankers. This is a step in the right direction. These are the engagements we need as we plan for the reopening. We must have more engagements. I would want to see such meetings. Let's see the teachers associations meeting with the institutions like National Water and Sewage Corporations to forge a way forward, because these are the most crucial incentives that we'll need. Let's see these meetings with Umeme. Let's see these meetings with URA, because URA is taxing people that are not working. Let's see these engagements most often, because these are the only ways we can build confidence for these institutions. And this cuts across in terms of parents, in terms of teachers, in terms of even the institutions or the owners of institutions. When they see these engagements, they can cling on those as a way of hope. So I think going forward, henceforth, what the Minister for Education started or has been doing, I think we should just gear it up more so that by January, some things are sorted and settled.
Okay. All right. Well, that's a very good recommendation that Felix does share with us, but the realization of it is a different conversation altogether. But where we stand right now, schools still are going to be open. But how prepared are they to actually reopen?
Well, Priscilla, thank you for that. Actually, first I'll go back to what Felix talked about, the time of hopelessness, where day by day people were losing hope. But me, I just want to take you back to that partial reopening when government came out and said, let's open in a staggered manner. There are lessons I want to believe that we learned that we do not want to see a reoccurrence. First and foremost, we know that most of the schools in Uganda are private schools. We have about 28,000 private schools, and they outnumber government. When we go to the lower levels, that is pre-primary or nursery, totally government does not own any nursery school there. So you find that most affected are the private institutions. Government can come up with funds to assist, like in the other partial opening where there were some grants given to buy sanitizers, to have some of this equipment, but the private sector. And that is where we saw that when government opened up, even classes that were not meant to attend, in some institutions, they came along because it is more of now profit-oriented commercialization. So how prepared are schools? First, I want to take you back. It was this very month when the organization or association that brings together private schools met. That is the Education and Sports Committee of Parliament. And they said, yes, January is not very far. But some of us don't even have a penny to ensure that we put in place the critical and needed incentives in fighting COVID-19. For example, we need maybe some water tanks and all that. We don't have that. We need to find out how we are going to space in some dormitories. So they had recommended to government that if at least you can give each of these members 100 million in a loan payable in a period of 5 years with an interest rate of not above 5%, that we are not asking for free things, but give us a loan specific targeting us recovery fund. Don't send it to the banks. They may not meet with these agents that we need this money for, to slash around, paint, buy some things here, because we've not been in business. And the banks are not willing actually to give us money of now because they know schools.
There's no guarantee.
Yeah, there's no guarantee. It's a risk venture right now. So we're even finding it hard to get loans from commercial banks. So that clearly explains that much as the date may be set, I mean, we know that come next year, January, we are going to open. But these institutions are not prepared. They have been out of business. And of course, you know, as these buildings, even just when kids go for holiday under normal circumstances before COVID, remember how the return, where there is much investment, you have to look at the walls, there's some painting, there's some building, there's some renovations here and there. Then also, some have to recruit new teachers. You know, the old teachers you had maybe have now long overgone. These new teachers, there's going to be discussed, and they come with terms and conditions. What do you have to attract them to your school? And the other biggest challenge, Priscilla, I was looking through the Ministry of Education and Sports, which I want to commend for a good work done in terms of sensitizing about COVID-19, coming up with vaccination. But the biggest challenge has always been monitoring and supervision. How do we prevent a rebirth? Remember, in the second wave, most old people that succumbed to COVID-19 did not contract COVID-19 because they were in public places. But we had these young students who returned from school. They were carriers of COVID-19, but because of their age, they were able to fight COVID-19. But when it went to these elder persons, they couldn't. So many of them succumbed to COVID-19. How do we prevent a recap of this? Do we have enough teams that are going to be monitoring these institutions to see that SOPs are observed, to ensure that really the spacing we are talking about, social distancing, is observed, I still believe there is so much that has to be done, that hasn't been done, and of course time is not so much on our side in terms of ensuring we prevent contraction of COVID-19 and actually this continuous spread of COVID-19 from those out of school, but getting it from those in school.
Okay. All right. Well, it also could be very interesting to note that education might not fully reopen come January 2022. It's going to be phased opening, which is going to be sort of, again, disturbing and worrying and creating the hopelessness that you guys were talking about. We do have a message here from Fred Chasho, who's from Sironko and also a director at Sitfed High School in Sironko. And he says, to be honest, government is biased on education. I don't think whether we shall go back in January, and the nearby information says that only senior ones and senior twos are to report for the first 3 months. That would be January, February, March, and then after the rest will follow. What a confusion. Let government be clear and they come up with a formal plan, and then we shall be able to adhere to the formal plan. So let's talk about this formal plan of reopening of the education sector. Why can't we allow it to fully reopen at once? Go back to the calendar year that we were used to, that schools do open up in January for first term, and then you do have them coming back in April, June for second term, December, because now that we are entering into a new year, this is a good opportunity to go back to normal.
Well, of course, if you ask me why, the simple answer to that is because of COVID. Why that's why you may not have things be as normal as they are. But also, what our viewer has brought up seemingly may be an opinion he has to back, for that matter. We have not seen many academic institutions jump onto the vaccination drive, and for me that worries. Nevertheless, there was a directive, I think last week, that at least every open university must have a center for vaccination, which I have seen in some universities. At least I've been able to particularly see that at the YMCA campus. I don't know how other, also Makerere, but I don't know how other institutions are doing it. The earlier you have a partnership between Ministry of Education and Ministry of Health, the better. It is the only guarantee.
So who's supposed to have a partnership with who? Is it the institution to have a partnership with the ministries?
No.
Or
the
ministries
Ministry of Education
being the ones to partner with people?
With the Ministry of Health.
Okay.
At that level, at policy level, because this must come down as an agreed policy of implementation. It is not good enough to say that all teachers must be vaccinated. Nothing, you see, not addressing the nitty-gritties that come with all this. It is rather sober for us to have an agreement. For example, an understanding can have such items like, one, how do we prioritize? Like, we must accept that for a school to open, it must have a particular percentage of people who are vaccinated. And we shall see how to implement that. Okay. In terms of staff, in terms of students.
And that brings in
but you see,
factor of monitoring and supervision.
No, that all
this?
should be catered for in the understanding.
But also,
secondly,
before we leave that particular point, you're trying to push Felix. You are you're speaking from the place of you don't know. For example, if Fred is the director of Sitfed High School, he is formerly having had 3,000 students in his school before COVID-19. If we were to reopen in January, he's not sure how many students are going to come back to school of the 3,000. Neither is he sure how many teaching and non-teaching staff is going to come back. For us to meet that target of, say, 50% of your staff and students must be vaccinated. So where do we get the 50% if not after a period of time of knowing that, okay, now over the 3 months, I have a stable 1,000 students in school?
You see, the situation we are looking at today is not a normal one, and we may not approach it normally. For example, when you talk about percentages, we shall calculate percentages in accordance to what you have, not necessarily what you expect.
But what do they have? Because they don't have, honestly, until they open, they have nothing.
You know,
and actually,
that also you don't know, because not until you open, But as you also open, there are expectations. Because if you're talking about not having anything, then probably shouldn't be talking about opening up these institutions at all.
I'll look at the example of Ministry of Education and Sports. When I tried to find out the figures of how many students have been vaccinated, the answer was, let's first open so that we can have these statistics properly. When you can really know that this school, that school has this amount of numbers. But also to go on Fred's question where he was wondering, why don't we give it a full blast? I was looking at some of the proposals by the Ministry of Education and Sports where they said, one, we might even reach an extent where we have hourly learning, where there's a section that comes in the morning, then leaves the evening, so that we need, first you need spaces. You know, you're opening in schools that have
utilize the space that you have, because you don't expect them to put up new buildings.
In terms of social distancing, so you can't have a full blast. You must have ways how you're going to do this. Importantly, to have social distancing and manageable numbers. That is going to happen as well. So these are some of the incidents why we may not give it up. Then also learning from, you know, there's what we call testing the waters. So like if I have senior ones and senior twos back, how have we ensure that standard operating procedures are being enforced? Are people adhering? But when you have a full blast, in case of the uncertainties, you have huge numbers of the problems caused and to manage them. So you open in a staggered manner, phased manner, as you analyze how are we perfecting these numbers, so that will be enough evidence for you to open in greater numbers.
Okay, all right. Clearly, we're opening a can of worms. It's a very long conversation, and maybe we can have a part to it later on. But at the end of the day, harmony within the ministries and the entities that are actually enabling the reopening of schools come January 2022. Ministry of Health, Ministry of Education, the National Task Force in different communities and districts, and also educationists. And how can they help each other sit on a round table and be able to aid each other in having the reopening of the education sector 2022 fully, at least by the end of the year 2022. For now, allow us to leave the conversation there. I see some of you are giving us your responses in that regard. We'll be looking at them later on. But we get to have our news. We get to also have a sneak peek into what's making headlines this morning. I know in the New Vision they have brought up logbooks. Your car was bought in 1982, but you have to get a new logbook. So
remember, it may not even be in your name.
No, but
you've never transferred it.
But
so the owner,
what's the rationality behind that? I think these things of just coming up with
fighting criminality.
No, how?
And you know, there are many vehicles that are parked at police.
To buy a car?
No, there are many vehicles that are parked at police. Reason being, it committed an offense. You can't track the owner.
Unless those people are going to come to people's homes or offices, who's going to work to good for it?
Okay, all right. Clearly, this is also something that is worth a debate. Later on, we'll be looking at traffic updates, and also we do have an air update. The Air A330-800 is showcasing right now at the Dubai Expo, one of the many engines that have been displayed, and what is in store for us as we display the very best of our Uganda Airlines. An interview with Samuel Senono while he is in Dubai for that expo. He'll be giving us more insight into the expectations of this exhibition globally. And of course, that will wrap up our 7 o'clock hour. Stay with us.